Okay, let's try this again. I just recorded this video once, but I accidentally had my voice recorded on a separate track. I could go into an editor and change that around, but honestly, I'm not a pro at this. I'm not a content creator, so I'm just gonna re-record it. This is the build. This is the Shadowblight and Blood Orb build. So this item right here really makes the build work. I've seen a lot of Shadowblight builds. Some of them revolve around minions, like using the Shadow Mages to try to proc Shadowblight more, and for some survivability. And also, a lot of the items that I have in this build, I'm not going to hover over them quite yet. I haven't got there yet. A lot of them are optional. I'm already level 80, but you can put together the core components of this build a lot earlier, and a lot of what I have is not absolutely necessary to make this work. But let's go over what I have. So the idea is you're going to be using Corpse Explosion. You're going to be using Corpse Explosion constantly, firing off a ton of corpses, which is going to give you basically an endless supply of blood orbs to hoover up. So you're going to be capped off on life, and if you have these pants, then you're also going to have a ton of barrier on top of that. This is one of the items that's not necessary. You don't need it. There are other options, but this is really good to have. This item is necessary to make the build work. Other core components to this build are similar to other Shadow builds. So you'll see this aspect here, which gives you more damage when Shadowblight procs 10 times. Because of how much shadow damage we're doing, that's going to be up for a huge majority of the time. And we've also got this one. Your Shadowblight does more damage each time it goes off, and that's also going to be up a huge portion of the time. We've also got these two components, which have to do with Blight pulls things together. So we're going to use that to pull things into our pools of damage. And generally pull things together to trigger our first corpse to start our chain. And this one right here, Bone Prison, spawns a pool of Blight, which is going to pull things together, and it's also going to apply vulnerability. The other items that I have, these are the ones that are nice to have. They can be traded out, not 100% necessary. If you have other items that you like more, then you can trade them out. I've got this one. Your crowd control lasts longer and you do more damage to unstoppable enemies. It helps out with bosses because they are unstoppable, and if we CC too much, that stuff becomes immune. We just get a damage boost to it. This item here, we get a barrier when we start a fight with an elite. That's just a nice survivability thing. I've got this right here. This one, it's not absolutely necessary for the build, but it's a huge quality of life improvement. The extra damage on this doesn't actually matter that much, because Corpse Explosion, although it is a good portion of our damage, triggering Shadowblight is what most of our damage actually comes from. What this does is allows us to shoot things with Corpse Explosion off screen. So without this, there are some pesky enemies like your wraiths and your succubuses and your vampires that like to constantly run away, and they're a real pain in the ass to track down. Without this item, you're basically a melee range build. With this item, you can use Corpse Explosion and just send it after them, and they'll only run so far away from you, so they'll stay in place and stand inside the blight damage. Once you have the core components, these three, that one and this one, then this is the next one you really, really want to get for an upgrade. And of course, I've got these pants. Yeah, you can have other pants. This one is just another nice upgrade. I would say in order of importance to make the build work, this is number 1. This is an absolute necessity. Number 2 would be at least one of these Shadowblight buffing things. You can do with just one of them. And then these things, this one that makes your Blight pull things together is really, really nice to have. I would say that's number 3, and then number 4 is this one, and then that, and then that, and the rest. Anyways, let's get into the skills. So the skills I'm using, I've got Reap, just 1 point. That's just to give us our first, we're going to start every fight by pulling things together and then reaping them and getting our first corpse. And then once we get that first corpse, we're gonna explode it, and that's gonna generate more corpses. We're kind of gonna have an endless supply of corpses to explode. Blight, this is a good chunk of our damage, and it's also gonna pull things together. It also works in conjunction with our Bone Prison, because we have the aspect that makes Bone Prison spawn a pool of Blight. It's going to pull things into our Bone Prison, which is going to apply vulnerability. I've got Blood Mist. This is just for our survivability. It helps us get out of CC. It doesn't really play into any other part of our build. It's just to get out of CC in dangerous situations as kind of a panic button. Corpse Explosion. This is the meat of our build. This is where a lot of our damage comes from. 5 points, and obviously we're using the Blighted Corpse Explosion. None of the curses because they're junk. We don't benefit from them really. You have 2 options here if you want to do more damage to things far away or things close to you with some damage reduction. I always take this one for the damage reduction because there are a lot of minions that it's really, really difficult to keep them away from you. And you know, we can play inside melee range. We've got enough tankiness in this build that we can play in melee range most of the time. The Corpse Tendrils, this is just because I had some extra points. This is, again, to pull things together and apply vulnerability. We kind of alternate between Corpse Tendrils and Bone Prison. So we use Bone Prison. Once that vulnerability works off, we can use Corpse Tendrils. Once that vulnerability wears off, we can do Bone Prison again and kind of switch between them back and forth. We're maxing out our shadow damage. If you want to sacrifice a couple points to get some more movement speed, you can. But as a Necromancer, I've kind of accepted my fate that we are a slow class. We don't really have any mobility, so I'm not too worried about buffing my speed. I'm just kind of, whatever, we're going to be slow, no biggie. What else we got? We're sacrificing all of our minions, so we take both of these so that we get a little bit more benefit from sacrificing them and a little bit of damage reduction. And of course, Shadowblight. This is where a majority of our damage is coming from, because we're going to be triggering Shadowblight all the time with all the different pools of shadow damage that we're laying down. We're going to be triggering Shadowblight a ton, and that's actually where the majority of our damage comes from. So the thing is, I said this was a Shadowblight and Blood Orb build. So if we get into the Paragon, we go pretty deep and invest heavily into this Blood Orb node. You know, we come and get the legendary for more damage when we suck up a Blood Orb. We're taking more damage when we get a Blood Orb and more damage while we're healthy. We're getting more Blood Orb healing. We're getting more damage. Yeah, more Blood Orb healing. So yeah, we're investing heavily into this tree. We're also going into this, I believe it's called the Wither tree, which is just buffing our shadow damage. And then, of course, we've got our basic tree. The glyphs that I'm using, you can see I've got a couple of them not completely leveled here, and that's actually what I'm doing next. Now that I'm up to level 80 and I've got all the uniques and stuff that I want, now I'm going to actually really start farming the Nightmare Dungeons to level up these last 2 glyphs. But this is the major one. When we suck up a Blood Orb, it fortifies us. And because we're constantly spamming Corpse Explosion, we're using a ton of corpses, so we have an endless supply of Blood Orbs to suck up, so we're always getting fortified. And then the other 2 glyphs are just added shadow damage over time. Pretty simple. We get everything that buffs our shadow damage and everything that buffs our healing and benefits from sucking up Blood Orbs. So, like I said, I already recorded this video once. You can see I'm at the end of a dungeon. I actually had a butcher in this dungeon that I had to fight. But we're going to do another one. since that last recording, I messed up the audio tracks. We're gonna do it again. So let's find this is a level 32. Poison damage, monster cold damage, monster barrier, monster vulnerability resist. The vulnerability resist kind of sucks, but I think we can do this. Let's go back to town. I think I can do this 32. The level 30 dungeon wasn't too much of an issue. Let's just do this one real quick. What is this? Whispering Pines? I don't know what kind of enemies are in the Whispering Pines. I'm just gonna use any old consumable. Doesn't matter, because I just want the experience boost. Oh, it is time to wake up. Look at that. Let's go do Whispering Pines. Of course, I get a dungeon that's 5 miles away. And I'll kind of demonstrate for a second. You know what? I'll actually split this video into 2 sections. I'll come out here and just demonstrate the build, like, right outside of town. And then I'll do another video that's just me doing some dungeons. Because I don't want the video to be too long. Last one I recorded, it was about 30 minutes. But this is how it works. This is the whole rotation that you go for. You suck things together, you get your first corpse, and then you know, spawn corpse explosion. Let me actually go somewhere where I'll see a lot of, a Helltide event. Where I'll see a lot of monsters. And we'll be able to see better kind of how it works. How long is this video so far anyways? 11 minutes? Okay. So I'll do this Helltide for, you know, 2 or 3 minutes. And then I'll record a second video that's me doing dungeons with this build.
Not while I'm in town.
Because I don't want it to be an outrageously long video again. So we suck things together, get our corpse, spawn corpse explode. And you can see the corpses chase after enemies. We're getting fortified and a barrier, which because of how many corpses we use and how many blood orbs we suck up, we're pretty much always full on Fortify and Barrier. We can apply our vulnerability. You can see we'll take a little bit of damage, but with how many blood orbs we suck up, like, we're instantly healed again. I do occasionally take a little bit of damage, but I'm not scared at all. You can see their blood orbs just laying on the ground everywhere. Let's go get these guys. Do that. And then spam. Yep. And I'll stop the video right here. We'll get this a tone. I think that's sorry. Sorry. Where did I put sorry? There we go. Alright. But yeah, you can see the build. So we're pulling things together, alternating between Bone Prison and Corpse Tendrils, and that just sucks all the mobs together and applies vulnerability. If we don't already have a corpse, we'll swing with Reap one time to generate our first corpse, and then just spam Corpse Explosion. And we can also alternate, especially with mobs that like to run away, we can alternate between spamming Corpse Explosion a few times and then Blight to kind of pull things back together and into the pools. Corpse Explosion, Blight, Corpse Explosion, Blight, and then one of these to pull things together and apply vulnerability over and over. And we've got Blood Mist as like a get out of jail free as our panic button. And yeah, that's basically it. Like I said, this is the key piece of the build right here. Without this, you can't spawn blood orbs, so you can't benefit from them. And if you don't have this, there are other Shadowblight and Shadow Overtime based builds that you can go with. But if you get this aspect, I highly recommend switching to this build and taking full benefit of those blood orbs, because it really sends the whole Shadowblight concept over the edge. Yeah, it's insanely powerful. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, maybe I actually have to start work pretty soon. My alarm went off saying I needed to get up, but this afternoon I'll run a few. I'll push and see how high Torment I can go. I did a level 30 as an example earlier. I have a level 32 aspect that I'm going to do. So, yep, hope you enjoyed.